All right, hello, ladies and gentlemen. So today we are talking all about time-efficient training for hikers and essentially talking through some simple strategies and training approaches that you can use to help fit training into a busy life. So let's get into it. To start with, when it comes down to it, there's many hikers out there, which I speak to pretty regularly, who don't really want to spend a huge amount of time in their training. Now, this typically ends up being a couple of different reasons. Number one, maybe a case of like, hey, they're just super busy. Maybe they've got a full-time job. Maybe they've got a young family. Maybe they've just got a big social life. Maybe they've got work fly in, fly out, or whatever it may be. There's a bunch of different things and kind of just end up having our schedule super busy. And the thought of fitting hours and hours and hours of training into our life, not ideal. Now, on the flip side, there's also a lot of hikers out there who, in all honesty, they just don't enjoy training. They're like, look, I know training is maybe a necessary evil. I know it's kind of something I probably should be fitting in. But again, the thought of spending hours and hours and hours each week to fit in training, it's just not going to happen. So they're the typically two big reasons where this time-efficient training really does come in. Now, regardless of sort of how short on time people are, whether it's due to busyness, due to just not wanting to fit things in, more than likely you're still going to benefit from getting some type of training in your week, whether it's hiking specific or general benefits or whatever it may be. But obviously, seeing we're talking about hikers today, we're going to be honing in on that. Now, ultimately, if you have a big adventure coming up, and maybe you've got a big trip, like coming up a big multi-day or an overnight or a big long day hike or something like that, doing some element of training preparation is going to be crucial for your safety and making sure you don't get yourself into dodgy positions, make sure you don't get in pain or whatever it may be, and also your chance of success of actually getting through this adventure. And even if you can only fit a small amount in, it's still going to make a pretty big difference. And if you're a regular hiker, maybe it's not just a big adventure in your head, just being able to fit in some type of training in your week is going to be really important just for making sure you are properly enjoying yourself when you're actually out on the trail, and that you're not just exhausted every time you get out there. And also your longevity in regards to this, because a lot of people do drop out because they're like, you know what, my body's slowing down, my fitness is slowing down, my strength is slowing down, I'm not feeling amazing. And training can alleviate a lot of that. Now, sometimes people do come into the mindset of like thinking, hey, I'm so short on time. Like, what's the point of even trying to fit in bits and pieces? Like, if I can't do an hour at a time or anything like that, is there really any point? And I'll sort of say 100%, if you have a plan, if you go in with a bit of intention, you can get some incredible benefits from training for both hiking specific and general lifestyle training in a really short amount of time invested. And I've literally had people who have only trained 5 minutes a day and seen some pretty dramatic improvements. It's not ideal, it's not perfect, we can't definitely fit in everything we want, but just committing to a small amount has made such a big difference. So basically, plan of attack for today, we're going to be going through a really simple process to just ensure your training is time efficient. So basically, first step, we're going to just identify what you need to work on and just make sure you go in with a bigger picture in mind when it comes down to this. Number two, we're going to come up with a bit of a baseline for your training, which is really valuable. And then number three, we're just going to sort of talk about how you can add in extra bits and pieces where you can. So to start with, let's start with the bigger picture. Now, a common mistake that I often see from hikers when they're short on time is they end up really stripping back their training. And what I mean by that is they'll be like, look, I've only got a small amount of time to train. I'm literally just going to walk every day, or I'm going to do pack walking every day, or I'm just going to do HIIT sessions or anything like that. And they end up just focusing on kind of one thing in their preparation. And the tricky thing with this is, yes, you are doing stuff. Yes, you're fitting things in, but a lot of hikers end up just missing crucial things in their training. They have these big blind spots in their training because they're only focusing on one or two things, and leave these other elements unexplored and really untouched, which is a bit unfortunate. Now, the examples here, as I sort of said before, just doing walking, just doing pack walking, just doing HIIT, just doing spin classes, I don't know, whatever it may be. I see this all the time. It's really common. Now, to ensure this doesn't happen, one thing that is good to just keep top of mind, and you're like, look, I'm going to be really busy. I want to fit my training in. What should I be doing? You want to keep top in mind that thinking, okay, there are multiple elements of fitness that I need to be ready for and improve on to help my hiking. There's many different things that actually play a pretty big role in my time on the trail. So we won't basically want to be aware that these things exist. These are the things we want to be touching on, and we want to be trying our best to expose our body to what it needs each week, and not just having these massive blind spots in training, but making sure we're getting exposures to all the things we need. Now, for hikers, there's so many different elements of fitness, but really the major things we want to be hitting in our training is number one, cardiovascular fitness and ideally aerobic fitness. So aerobic fitness is our ability to produce energy while using oxygen as a fuel source. So basically the ability for us to just go and go and go for long periods of time, the single most important thing when it comes down to a hiker's performance. On top of that, ideally, we want to be fitting in some muscular strength, so challenging the muscles to develop strength, which is really, really beneficial for a bunch of different reasons for hikers. We also want to be touching on muscular endurance, which is kind of the flip side of strength. So muscular strength is kind of the maximal amount of force our body can produce for a short amount of time. Muscular endurance is sort of the ability of the body to produce force again and again and again and again and again and again and again, which is super relevant for hiking as well. And also a bit of mobility often gets overlooked, but mobility is just a really, really important thing, like our range of motion through our joints, just to help us feel comfortable, make sure we're getting out on the trail, we can sort of tackle, sort of slightly more tricky situations and this and that, and just keeping the body feeling a little bit more comfortable day to day. There's much more other bits and pieces, but they're kind of four main things we really want to make sure that we are ticking off each week in one way or another when we're looking at our training. And on top of that, when we're looking at hiking, obviously there's these hiking specific challenges as well that we want to make sure we're kind of tackling. So carrying a pack, hitting stairs, hitting hills, something like that. Getting some exposures to this hiking specific stuff is also pretty important. So you may be looking at this and be like, oh, Rowan, like, you know what? Cardio, strength, endurance, mobility, hiking specific stuff. How do I fit this all in? I am short of time, like you're getting a bit ambitious here. And yeah, it can look a little bit intimidating looking at it like this, but that's what the idea of this presentation is, where we're going to break things down a little bit more. So with that being said, let's talk through how we can fit all of this stuff in on a short amount of time. Now, let's start with your hiking. Like, I'm not going to spend too much time on the hiking stuff, but yeah, we do need to mention it. Obviously, hiking pretty relevant for improving hiking fitness. But when you are tight on time, hiking is always the toughest thing to fit in. Obviously, it's the most time consuming because not only are you spending multiple hours out on the trail, typically it comes with organization, it comes with driving to the trailhead. It ends up being pretty time consuming. So it ends up being the trickiest thing to fit in for people who are super busy. So ultimately, when it comes down to if you do have a particular adventure coming up or you just like to get out hiking, obviously we do need to fit in some type of hiking where we can. So ultimately, the best way of going about this is just planning ahead. Get out your calendar, look in the months ahead. If you've got a particular adventure coming up, look at that date of the adventure and work backwards in your calendar and just look when may be realistic for me to hike. Look, I've got all these social occasions, I've got these birthdays, I've got these things coming up. Where can I actually fit in some days to hike? And also, realistically, how may I actually be able to fit in? Can I actually go out for like a 5 to 6 hour hike? Is that reasonable for me? Or am I just really dreaming there? Am I only really going to be able to squeeze in 2 hours between kids' sports games or something like that? Be realistic, but get out a calendar, think about it, and work backwards and just block off times you may be able to hike. Schedule these in advance. Put them in the calendar, have them there. If things come up and things get in the way, you know what, that's fine. Like, life gets in the way. But if you have them scheduled in advance, that's such a significant thing to help you fit it in. So yeah, as I said, I'm not going to spend too much time on this because the hiking stuff, you just squeeze it in where you can when you're tight on time and just work with it. And ultimately, some people are like, you know what, I am so busy, I just can't do any hiking at all, which may sound a little bit crazy to some people, but it does happen. Ultimately, if you can't get out and hike, if you have a big adventure coming up and you're like, you know what, there's not a chance in the world I can get out and do some type of hiking, you need to be able to replace that with just some type of extended walking sessions somewhere in your month. You need to get some exposure to the legs just moving for long periods of time. So even if you can't actually hike, go through this same process and just ask yourself, okay, you know what, are there weekends or are there days where I may be able to fit in a 2-hour walk around the local neighborhood or a 3-hour walk or something like that? And again, just think, what can I fit in? What is realistic? Schedule it in and aim to fit as much as you can, if possible. It is necessary. Some people get away with it, and I've trained people who haven't done any type of walking leading into their trips. It's not ideal. It's not perfect. You don't really want to be in that situation. So fit in what you can. I'm not going to spend too much more time on that, but that's pretty straightforward. Now, beyond that, once we've sort of figured out our hiking, then we want to look at our training sessions. What are the actual training sessions we're going to be doing off the trail, which are going to help us on the trail? Now, the best thing you can do when it comes to this, when you are tight on time, you're trying to be time efficient, is essentially we want to come up with a baseline of your training. Now, what I mean by that is basically when it comes down to training, when it comes down to improving yourself, improving your fitness, your strength, your resilience, consistency and routine are extraordinarily powerful tools when it comes down to your training journey. And if you can get a consistent routine of ticking off sessions week after week after week after week after week, that's where the magic of training happens. That's where you start to feel really good. That's where you really get progress and this and that. And trying to get consistency in your week and in your months of training and getting a good solid routine is such a powerful thing. However, one major mistake people often make when they are tight on time is they end up just biting off a little bit more they can chew. They're like, look, I'm pretty busy. I've got something coming up. I need to fit things in. And they're like, oh, you know what? I'm super busy, but I'm going to try and aim to fit, 2 60-minute sessions in a week. Or I'm going to try and do 3 or 4 45-minute sessions in a week. I think I might be able to fit this in. And, for a lot of people, this will sort of work for a week or two. They'll go out, they'll be like, boom, this is working. I don't know, I'm fitting these sessions in. And then all of a sudden, a busy week comes up. You end up having more work or a kid gets sick or something happens. And all of a sudden, you're already busy and you have less time. And then this plan fails. And you're like, well, I can't fit this in this week, so I'm just going to skip it. And then essentially what happens is you skip it, you miss it, you fail. Then the next week you try again, you go for maybe a week or two, and then again, something comes up, you fail, and this and that. And we never get into this consistent routine of things. And ultimately what it does is it sets up a failure loop where basically you're not regularly winning, you're not keeping on improving, but it's stop, start. There's just failure after failure after failure after failure, which is really detrimental just to our positive mindset through training and our improvement over time. It's just like it happens all the time, and I talk to people all the time, even people who aren't strapped for time and they're just like have plenty of time to train, but they get stuck in this failure loop, and this is one of the biggest reasons why people don't succeed in their training. We don't want that. Basically, what we want to do is flip this up. Instead of getting in a failure loop, we want to get in a winning loop and just sort of just tick off week after week after week of being successful. So instead, what we want to do to combat this is we want to sit down and we want to figure out a baseline of training that you are confident you can fit in even on really tough weeks. This isn't a case of saying, hey, best case scenario, I can fit this all in. It's not a case of saying, you know what, I'm going to really try my best to fit this in. It's like, you know what, even on my busiest weeks, I am confident this is the amount of training I can still fit in. And it's basically, just a baseline which every single week you can fit in, regardless of what's going on. And then once you have that baseline, we want to tick that off every single week. And then if you have more time some weeks, have more time some months, you can just add on top. But we always hitting that minimum baseline. So valuable. Now, the way to figure this out, really simple. Basically, ask yourself the question, even on busy weeks, what can I realistically fit in with training? And I'll say this again, easy on busy weeks, what can I realistically fit in with training? Ask yourself this question, be honest with yourself. Put yourself in the position of thinking, okay, last week or 2 weeks ago, I was flat chat, I had so much going on, like so busy. Thinking back to that, realistically, if I really did try, what could I have fit in? Some people might ask themselves that question, they'll be like, you know what, in all honesty, I had a few little gaps. I could probably fit in 3 30-minute sessions, maybe. Or maybe you might be like, you know what, I can have 30-minute sessions out the window. I can maybe do 20-minute sessions like 3 times a week. Or maybe it might be a case of like, you know what, even 20 minutes is too much. Maybe I could actually cram 10 minutes in a day. I could just wake up a little bit earlier, fit 10 minutes in, or whatever it may be. Everyone's going to be a little bit different, but you get the idea. We kind of want to figure out what's realistic for you. Now, once you have this number and you come up with an idea, you think, hey, this sounds pretty good. The next question you want to ask yourself is, how confident am I that I can fit this in every single week, even in these busy things? And confident, I want you to put yourself on a percentage. I'm 100% confident down to I'm 0% confident. Ask yourself this question. Even on my busy weeks, how confident am I that I can fit in 10 minutes a day with my training? Now, if you answer yourself and if you're like, you know what, I'm about 90% certain that I can fit this in, this is a pretty good target. It means you kind of hit the bullseye here. This is the good target we want, because you're pretty certain you're going to fit it in. It's more than likely going to be successful, and you can get in that success loop of just winning after winning after winning after winning, getting that routine, getting that consistency. But there's a little bit of challenge. It's not the easiest thing in the world. Like, you've got to pay attention to it. 90% certain is a sweet spot. Alternatively, if you ask yourself, hey, you know what? how confident I can fit it in. You're like, oh, I'm like 50-50 maybe, or like 60% certain, something like that. What that means is you want to take whatever you said, you want to reduce it down. So if you said, hey, I want to do 3 30-minute sessions, and you're like, oh, I'm 50-50, I can fit that in, then ask yourself, all right, reduce it down, ask myself that question again. How confident I can do 3 20-minute sessions this time? Is that 60%, 70%, 80%? Literally, you keep on doing this process until you get to that point where you're 90% certain. And if you're 100% certain with something, you may want to consider making it slightly harder and just give yourself a little bit of a challenge. Just that tiny little bit of push can go a long way. So that's kind of the process. You want to get this baseline of how much realistically can I fit into my week. Takes a little bit of thinking, takes a little bit of playing around, but really, 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 really valuable. Now, once we've got this baseline of training and I'm like, you know what, this is the rough dates I think I may be able to hike. This is kind of what my baseline of training is going to be. And then we kind of want to build out, okay, what is that training actually going to look like? And this is where we want to build out our training plan. Now, basically, there's many, many, many ways to do this. Like there's countless ways you could go about this. And everyone's going to have slightly different ways. It's probably going to work for them. But for simplicity's sake, for everyone watching, I'm just going to give a one-size-fits-all approach. As I said, this isn't the only way, but this is a simple way which may work for a lot of people. Now, if you're tight on time, you've got your baseline on training, this is a simple approach that I like. Number one of the sessions somewhere in the week, you want to fit in some type of walking workout in your week. Somewhere. You have to fit in some type of walking if you can. So this may be a case of sort of saying, hey, if I'm doing 3 30-minute sessions, one of those sessions is just going to be a purely walking session. Or if I'm doing 10 minutes a day, maybe 2 of those sessions are going to be walking sessions, whatever it may be. Something in your week's got to be walking based. And ideally, we want to make these hiking specific. So what I mean by that is not just walking, but adding something extra challenge, which is going to help us prepare for the trail. So it might be walking with a pack. Super simple, super effective. Might be doing stairs, might be doing hills, might be doing, I don't know, whatever. But something just thinking, okay, walking session, and then what can I do to make it a little bit more hiking specific? That's where you want to start. Now, on top of that, the other workouts in your week, we've got our walking session, 1 or 2 or whatever maybe we're doing. The other sessions, what we're going to do in the week, we kind of want to think, okay, these are the sessions that it's not so much going to be walking, but what we're going to do, half the time I have available, I'm going to spend doing strength development, and half the time I have available, I'm going to spend doing cardio. And we're getting 50-50 or roughly 50-50, a bit of strength, a bit of cardio. Now, this can be a really, really simple way of making sure we are kind of covering all our bases each week. Because ultimately, when it comes down to this, we're hitting our walking, we're hitting our hiking specific training, we're getting a bit of strength exposure, we're getting a bit of cardio exposure, and then somewhere between that strength and cardio, there's probably going to be a bit of endurance as well. And then in our warm-ups, which I'll explain in a moment, we're also going to get a bit of mobility. So we're kind of covering those 5 things that I mentioned before, but with a simple breakdown like this. So let me break this down and sort of explain sort of what this looks like, because some of this stuff may not make sense until we kind of work through the whole process on this video, but bear with me, we'll see how we go. So let's break down these workouts. So we're talking about these workouts now, not the walking workouts. They're walking workouts. They're simple. We're not talking about them. These are our other ones, which we're splitting up half strength, half cardio. So if we were looking at 30-minute sessions, and if you're like, you know what, 30 minutes is what I'm going to aim for. This is what a 30-minute session may look like. You may spend 5 minutes warming up and doing a bit of mobility work. As I said before, mobility pretty valuable. 5 minutes warming up, doing mobility. We warm up for the session. We're getting some mobility into our week. Great. Then you might do 5 to 15 minutes of strength training. And I'm going to explain how this looks in a moment and how you can put this together. You might spend 10 to 15 minutes of strength training. And then 10 to 15 minutes of cardio. That ends up being about a 30-minute workout. And you tick off mobility, strength, cardio. And in amongst that, there's probably a bit of endurance as well. Pretty straightforward. A 20-minute session, pretty similar. 5-minute warm-up, 7 minutes of strength, 7 minutes of cardio. It may not seem like much, but if you're going with a plan, you're going with intention, you get a lot of work done in these 7 minutes. Or 10-minute sessions. In a 10-minute session, you're like, well, something's got to give, and usually it ends up being the mobility. And you may just jump into 5 minutes of strength, 5 minutes of cardio. Boom. Very, very straightforward. So there's some kind of example breakdowns of what it may look like. So, but how does that actually look like and translate into a session? So on the strength side of things, as we said, half strength, half cardio. Let's talk about the strength to start with. Couple of ideas what we want to think about with the strength training. If we traditionally, when we think about strength training, we think about, okay, we're doing squats, we're doing deadlifts, we're doing all of these exercises, this and that. That stuff can be really, really beneficial if you're very confident with that, very competent with that, or whatever it may be. But ultimately, when it comes to time efficient training, we want to keep things simple. We want to keep things to a point where you're not messing around setting up equipment. You're not messing around having to move weights around. You're not trying to learn complicated exercises. We want to keep things really, 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 really simple. So you're not spending time thinking, you're just working. So ultimately, when you're choosing exercises to do, just think, is this simple? Do I need to set this up? Is this complicated? Can I do this when I'm tired and not have to think about it? Yada, yada, yada. Keep it simple. Now, on top of that, a really, really, really good way of looking at time-efficient strength training is leveraging what we call sequences. Now, what this means is the traditional way of approaching strength training is you do an exercise, you do like 10 repetitions, and then you're like, all right, I need a rest now. And we need to give the body a period of rest. We rest for a minute or two, whatever it may be. Then we do the exercise again, then we rest. Then we do the exercise again, then we rest, then we move on to another exercise. That's the traditional way of going about our strength training. A lot of people do it, but it's not very time efficient, and it is a bit of a waste of time in our respects. Now, the flip side, a lot of people are like, okay, I'm really, really, really busy. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to shorten down my rest periods. So they'll do an exercise, and instead of resting for like 1 to 2 minutes or maybe 2 minutes or something like that, they'll rest for 30 seconds or 40 seconds. Then I'll go again. And they'll go, but having very minimal rest. Now, tricky thing with this is, yes, it's very, very time efficient, but it ends up pulling a little bit of the effectiveness away from our strength training, because ultimately, we kind of want to be giving the muscles plenty of time to rest and recover in between each time you do that exercise. Your legs do an exercise. Ideally, we want about 2 minutes for it to rest before it goes again, so it can properly recover and you can get the most out of your strength workouts, strength exercises. So if we're just doing really short rests, a little bit inefficient. So essentially the idea behind sequences is, instead of doing this work, rest, or instead of just reducing our rest periods down, what we do is we structure our workout in a way where we basically use the rest periods where we're traditionally just standing around or sitting around doing nothing, but we use those rest periods productively, meaning we're giving the body the rest it wants in between exercises, but we're not just sitting around doing nothing, but we're doing other things. We're working on other areas of the body. So we're still kind of resting muscles, but we're still being productive. So what that looks like is basically like this. This is an example of a sequence. There's lots of different ways of going about this, but this is how you may structure a workout. First of all, you do a lower body exercise. Could be anything, squat, glute bridge, whatever it may be. Now, instead of resting, what you do is you go straight to an upper body exercise. It might be a push-up or a row or something like that. And instead of resting there, you go into a core or calf exercise. Then instead of resting there, you go to a mobility exercise. And then you go back up to the top, lower body, upper body, core, mobility, lower body, upper body, core, mobility. Beauty of this is, by the time you get back up to that lower body exercise, it's probably been 2 or 3 minutes. So those legs are ready to go again. But we've actually been really efficient. We've been doing something productive this whole way through. And this is a really, really, really effective way of just structuring a workout. So you fit a lot of work in, you cover all the bases you need, but you're not wasting time just messing around. Very, 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 very effective. Now, I'm not going to go into this in too much more detail on the strength training side of things, because I could talk about this for hours and hours and hours, and I already have talked about this for hours and hours and hours. So if you are looking at time-efficient strength training for hiking, if you need some help figuring out what exercises fit into things, if you need some help figuring out how to structure a workout out, if you need some help just looking at how this all comes together, I have something for you which is really, really useful. Basically, I have a free mini course around getting started with strength training for hiking. Essentially, what it covers is the benefits around strength training for hiking. If you're not aware of just why this is so effective, it talks about that. It talks through some principles around effective strength training, so how to get the most out of this type of training to best help you on the trail. And it also teaches you how to create your strength workouts. So it takes that sequence idea and it teaches you how to put that into action for yourself. It gives you some examples, it gives you some templates, it gives you workout exercise examples, and you can basically just plug and play and put things together. So ultimately, at the end, you can put together your own strength workouts using this information, which is going to best help you on the trail. Now, if you're interested in getting involved with this course, it is completely free. All you need to do is go to summitstrength.com.au/strength-mini-course. That's summitstrength.com.au/strength-mini-course. Plug in your details, you'll get set up on our education system, and you'll be good to go. So that's the strength side of things. Now, let's talk about cardio. So as we sort of said, these workouts we're looking at, half strength, half cardio. Let's talk about the cardio portion. Now, ultimately, when it comes down to this really time-efficient training, when we're thinking about cardio, we've already doing our walking, which is our like slower, steady state cardio in the week, which is good. When we're looking at these strength training, when we're a little bit short on time, long intervals are your friend. Long intervals are really, really, really effective for hikers. And I'll explain what these are. Now, traditional HIIT, so high intensity interval training, a lot of people are familiar with this, and a lot of people have done this in one way or another. HIIT is a great method of time efficient training because you're fitting a lot of work into a small amount of time. Now, traditional HIIT involves doing things like 20 seconds really, really quick and then resting, and then 20 seconds really, really quick and then resting, or 30 seconds or 45 seconds or something like that. Really, really, really short periods and then rest, and you repeat that multiple times. Now, that is effective. You can do that. It'll work pretty well. And for general fitness and general health, really, 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 really good. However, when it comes to hiking, these things you can probably do a little bit better. And when there's a slight change and a slight adjustment, you can probably get a little bit more relevant training for hiking. Because when it comes down to hiking, we're very, very rarely working at that crazy high intensity. We're very, very rarely working at 20, 30, 45 seconds at a time. Not to say these things won't have some crossover to help you, but if we can shift it a little bit more relevant to hiking, you get a lot more out of this. So hiking, obviously when we're climbing, when we're going at quick paces, we're going for longer periods of time and we're sustaining that for longer periods of time. So long intervals are a really, really good way of going about things. So instead of, if you're doing this type of interval training, instead of doing 20 seconds, 30 seconds, 45 seconds of super, 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 super quick, we can do instead 3 minutes or 4 minutes or 5 minutes of moderately quick. So it won't be quite as quick as that super high intensity, but it's still going to be pretty quick. This is going to be a little bit more relevant because, number one, it's going to be a little bit more aerobic based, meaning we're working our aerobic energy system, which is really, really, really beneficial for hiking. And also on top of that, when we're extending these super long, these longer intervals, that's going to get a lot of endurance through the legs as well. As we sort of said before, muscular endurance, the ability of the body to produce force again and again and again and again and again and again and again, you do get a bit of effect of this for these longer intervals. And then when we're short on time, this can be a nice way of getting a good bang for your buck out of things. So ultimately, when it comes down to this, a few examples of what these long intervals kind of look like. Now, when you're looking at this type of things, there's a few ways you can go about it. If you are training at home and you have a stationary bike or rower or elliptical hanging around, super useful, very, very easy, or at the gym or anything may be, these can work really, really well. Alternatively, a really simple one that's super relevant for hiking is just doing step-ups, having like a low box or a low step and stepping up and down, stepping up and down. You could put together like mini circuits of just lots of like exercises in a row. So it might be an example of doing squats and then lunges and then kettlebell swings and just repeating that, doing 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10 until the time period is done. In all honesty, there's so many different ways you can go about this. Really, anything that's going to provide stimulus to the legs. So it's the legs that are working, because obviously hiking is pretty leg-based, and it's not just throwing slam balls or something like that. So anything that's going to be using the legs, so we will get a bit of endurance base, and also we'll get the heart rate up. Whatever falls into that category. Technically, some people might say, hey, I could just do burpees for 3 minutes. And yeah, technically that could probably work. I don't know. I don't want to do 3 minutes of burpees. I don't know if anyone wants to do 3 minutes of burpees. But yeah, you can put together your own things here. Really anything that kind of fits into that category there. Then essentially, if we're looking at these sort of workout examples and we're like, okay, we want to fit in half hour session of cardio. If you had 15 minutes to do cardio, you might do 4 minutes quick, 1 minute slow, repeat that 3 times. If we were using the step up example, we'd sort of say 4 minutes of step ups, stepping up, stepping down, stepping up, stepping down, have a minute rest, just chill out, recover, do that 3 times. Super simple. Or you might do this on the bike or the rower, the elliptical, or with one of those circuits. As you can see, 4 minutes, you're going pretty quick. It's going to be pretty effective. Super, super simple way of getting some good work out of 15 minutes. Or if you're looking at 10 minutes, it may be a case of doing 3 minutes quick, 1 minute slow, and repeat that, I shouldn't say 4 times, 3 times. You can get a lot of work done there. Or if you're looking at 5 minutes, you literally might just say, hey, I'm going to do a 5-minute interval. I'm just going to do 5 minutes, step ups, as many as I can in 5 minutes. That's pretty effective. It's going to do the job, whatever it may be. But we want to look at this sort of long, sustained, moderately difficult stuff where you're going to get a good burn in the legs, get the heart rate up. That's going to work out pretty well. So that's what we got so far. We planned out our hiking. We're like, hey, we're just going to fit in what hiking we can. We figured out our baseline of training. We're like, this is what I'm going to fit in every single week, regardless of what's going on. Then we've broken down, okay, we're going to fit in a little bit of walking somewhere, and we're also going to break into our sessions, half strength, half cardio. That's kind of where we're at right now. Now, to finish this off and top things off, we basically want to take this baseline and just add on extras where we can. And basically we want to sort of say, you know what, we're going to fit in, we're going to sit this baseline, but because we're tight on time, any little extras is going to help us. So, simplest way of going about this is basically we've got our baseline as our minimum. On weeks that you have a bit more time, you can simply extend the current workouts out. If you're going 30-minute sessions and you're like, you know what, actually today I could fit 45 minutes in, just extend it out to 45 minutes, do some more sets, repeat things a little bit longer, do a bit more cardio, whatever it may be. Or if you're like, you know what, I have an extra day this week, I can train, just fit an extra session in. Basically, you want to sit at that baseline as a minimum, but then just add in extra bits and pieces where you can on bigger weeks. That's great. And that way, every single week you are winning, every single week you're sticking to the plan and getting things in, and all the extra stuff is a bonus. Really, 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 really effective. Now, on top of this, we want to search for extras where we can in the week. And little bits and pieces, we can just add in random bits and pieces into the week, which if we can accumulate enough of this, it's really going to complement the other training we're doing, filling a few other gaps and really get us where we want to be. So an example of this might be leaving a loaded pack at your front door. And I get a lot of my clients to do this. And basically they just leave a pack at their door. And if they're like, you know what, actually, I'm home from work 10 minutes earlier. I got the earlier bus or the earlier train. I actually have a bit of time, come home, grab the pack, do a loop around the block, 10 minutes or whatever it may be. There it is. Or maybe, you know what, I'm going down the shops and I'm just going to duck out, grab some milk. And you're like, well, the pack's here. I'm just going to throw on the pack and walk down the shops. Or whatever. Leave a pack at your front door. Just fit in little bits and pieces where you can. Squeeze in extra stairs. You know, you've heard this a million times. I'm not going to harp on about it. At work, at the grocery store, whatever it may be. Fit in some stairs. You know, you've heard that before. You can leave a step set up at home. So if you've got one of those aerobic steps or something like that, just leave it set up somewhere with an eye line. And then basically every time you walk past or once a day, just do a minute on it or something. Just do 10 step ups here and there. Fit in little bits and pieces like that. Or you can come up with some simple options at like random times in the day. Like, for example, calf raises when you're waiting for the kettle to boil. If you're a big tea drinker, you may spend 4 or 5 or 6 minutes literally just waiting for the kettle each day. You could fit in some calf raises there. A lot of people do balance exercises when they're brushing their teeth. Stand on one leg, close their eyes, brush their teeth. That's pretty solid. Maybe if you're sitting in the office chair and you can do a little bit of mobility, stretch your glutes out, stretch your hammies out, or whatever it may be. Come up with ideas. Just be creative here and just think what is going to fit into your day. And then whatever you come up with, essentially you want to just plaster reminders in your face about it. So for example, if you've got the loaded pack at the front door, that's a pretty good reminder because the pack's just sitting there. Or if you've got the extra stairs, if you're kind of, going into work and you're like, oh, you know what, every single day I can either take the stairs or take the elevator, just set a reminder on your phone to beep the time you walk into work saying you're going to take the stairs. Or if you're looking at the calf raises when the kettles are boiling, put a note, like a post-it note on your kettle, calf raises, just give yourself the reminder. Or on your toothbrush, or if you're stretching when you're watching TV, put a note on your controller or anything, like whatever it may be. The idea behind this is basically having in-your-face reminders, because we have a lot of good intentions with this type of stuff. But again, when we're tired, when we're busy, a lot of these things kind of fall out the window. So if we just have a simple little reminder just saying, hey, let's do this, it'll give you a big advantage in fitting it in. So we've broken it down. Hiking, baseline, half strength, half cardio, fit in some walking, add in extra where you can. That's kind of the plan of attack here. Now, this is an example plan that kind of puts this all together, just to kind of put it all in one place. In this situation, I've said, look, I'm super busy. I got lots going on. Realistically, I can only really see myself doing 3 20-minute sessions per week. That's my baseline. That's what I'm going to stick with. That's what I'm going to fit with every single week, no matter what's going on. Now, what that's going to look like is once a week, I've got a nice steep hill just around the block. I'm actually going to spend 20 minutes going up and down a hill. I'm going to put a timer on, just spend 20 minutes, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, as many times as I can, then I'm done. That's my one session. Now, the other 2 workouts, I'm going to do 2 strength sessions, which is going to involve 5 minutes of warm up, 7 minutes of strength, which is going to be a 4 exercise sequence, which we did an example today. I'm going to do lower body, upper body, core mobility, go back to the top, lower body, upper body, core mobility. That should take me 7 minutes, done, super easy. Then I'm going to do 7 minutes of cardio. I'm going to do 3 minutes of step ups, 1 minute rest, do that twice, done. That's my 20-minute workout. I'm going to bang that out. And then on top of that, I'm going to try and fit in some calf raises at work. I know at work, I've got lots of time when I'm just faffing around, when I'm like talking to people on the phone or anything like that. I'm just going to do some calf raises when I'm on the phone. I know Some days I just get home, I get the early bus. I'm just going to leave a pack at home. I'm going to do 10 minutes of walk if I just get that bus that's slightly earlier. And when I watch TV, I know I sit down, I watch TV to unwind. I'm just going to do 5 minutes of stretching each night in front of the TV. Then long term, and that's basically my plan. Only 60 minutes a week of training plus a few extras, you end up fitting in quite a bit. Now, you may be looking at this and be like, okay, this kind of looks good, but again, is this really going to make a huge amount of a difference? But if we break this up over the long term, it really, really does. Because if we look at 1 month of doing this, we're fitting in 60 minutes each week. 1 month is like 4 weeks. We get 4 hours of training plus extras, which is a dramatic difference to 0, or a dramatic difference to like 30 minutes or whatever it may be. And that 4 hours of training can go a long, long, long way. But if you string this together for 2 months, then we get 8 hours of training. That is really, really significant. And again, 8 to 0, very, very different. We're looking at 3 months, 12 hours of training. Like, it really, really does add up. And this is literally only 3 20-minute sessions in a week, plus a few extras here and there. So powerful. So hopefully that makes sense. Hopefully that gives some direction in regards to things, and hopefully that just sort of gives some insights, maybe sparks a little bit of inspiration around this. Because when it comes down to this time-efficient training, just coming up with a plan, making sure something is in place that you're going to follow and you're going to tick off, it makes all the difference. And if you can fit this stuff in and can go tick it off week after week after week after week, even if you're only doing a tiny little amount, it can go such a long way. So really, really, really do hope this does help. Now, basically, if you did need a little bit of help putting this all together, and I fully understand that sometimes you can look at this and be like, oh, I don't know, maybe my situation's a little bit different, or maybe I don't really know what I should be doing with the cardio or the strength, or maybe I'm just so busy I just don't have the time to figure this out for myself. If you do need a little bit of help putting this all together, I would love to chat with you. Now, ultimately, through Summit Strength, we offer personalized training programs for hikers, helping them get fit, strong, resilient for their adventures. Ultimately, what our typical programs include is a custom and personalized workout program, which will get you ready for anything the trail may throw at you, obviously working around what's practical for you, what's realistic for you, and what's going to fit into your life. We're going to educate you. We put a big emphasis on the education around the peripheral factors, which can make or break an adventure, things like nutrition, recovery, self-care, and mental strength. Again, if you're tight on time, we'll make sure you get the key points, the main things that are going to make such a difference for your situation, so you get big results out of a small amount of time invested. And also give you the coaching, accountability, and support to keep you on track, help you work around everything that's going on, and all of that. So ultimately, if this did sound like something you'll be interested in, learn a little bit more, what you can do is go to summitstrength.com.au/online. On there, we have a big video, talks about our training a little bit, and also you can book a call on that page with our team. Have a little bit of chat, talk through your situation. We can talk through what our programs look like, and we can ultimately see if and how one of our packages may be right for you, your goals, your situation, and your hiking. So with that being said, I really do hope this helps a few people. I really do hope you've enjoyed this if you stuck with me this long. So thank you for watching. I hope you have a lovely day, and we'll talk to you very, very soon.